In this Baldur's Gate 3 Early Access video, we're going to be talking about classes, taking a look at the 6 classes in Baldur's Gate Early Access, which are Cleric, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Warlock, and Wizard. Obviously, these are not all the classes in 5th edition D&D. More are expected to be added before the live release of the game, so we'll be updating this with other videos and guides in the future as we get those added to the game. But for now, let's focus on the 6 that we can talk about, and the first one up is Cleric. Clerics are a divine spellcasting class, which means they use Wisdom for their spellcasting modifier. Their spellcasting modifier is what adds bonuses to their rolls in order for their spells to be harder to resist or for them to be more accurate. So Wisdom is going to very much help them in connecting with their spells on enemies. When you choose a Cleric in Baldur's Gate 3, at least during Early Access, you're going to choose from one of 3 subclasses, which are Light Domain, Life Domain, or Trickery Domain. And this is going to be done in character creation. A lot of other classes get their subclass like at level 2 or level 3, but when you make a Cleric, you're going to be picking this right out of the gate. The benefits of these classes, or subclasses I should say, is the specialization of the spells that they have. You're going to get certain spells that belong to that domain that you don't have to prepare. In Baldur's Gate 3 and in Dungeons & Dragons, you have to prepare spells from the spells that you know in order to cast them, which means that you're not going to be able to cast every spell you know, and you're going to have to pick and choose from the spells you have in order to, use them in combat or outside of combat. And you cannot change these on the fly. You need to rest in order to change the spells you've prepared. So domain spells, though, do not need to be prepared. They're always going to be active for you. So if you choose the life domain, for instance, there's a couple spells there that are always going to be your domain spells. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of life domain, you can see bless and cure wounds here. That means these are going to be always prepared for you. You don't need to prepare them, and you can fill up your other prepared slots with other spells. So you're always going to have these ones on your skill bar, and you can pick the other 3 that you wish. And as you level up throughout the game, you're going to get more and more of these domain spells that you don't have to prepare, and obviously the spells that you get are going to be closely aligned with the subclass that you choose. For instance, if they're trickery, they're going to be more like illusion type spells, and if they're life domain, they're going to be more like healing type spells. And light domain has like fire type spells. So basically, you're going to have to choose whether you want to be a healing type cleric, whether you want to be more of like an elusive type cleric that has like some protection magic, or you want to be kind of like a fiery offensive cleric. Also, looking over the class features, no matter which cleric type you get, you're going to get Wisdom saving throw proficiency, which means you're going to add your proficiency bonus to your Wisdom saving throw. So if any harmful effect tries to get you and you need to roll a Wisdom check, you're going to get to add your proficiency bonus there. Same with Charisma. You're going to have light armor and medium armor and proficiency, which is pretty good, a shield, and simple weapon proficiency. Simple weapons is not a lot of weapons, so if you want to use other weapons, I suggest picking a race that comes with some good weapons, elf potentially, in order to get other weapon types, unless you're fine with those. You do a lot of casting as a cleric, so your weapon isn't quite as important as maybe it would be for a paladin, which isn't in early access yet. So keep that in mind that you're going to be casting quite a lot, probably over 50% of the time in most cases. Depends on the type of cleric you make. But you're not going to rely on your weapon as much as maybe a paladin would. Depending on which subclass you pick, you're also going to get some other bonuses besides the spells that you get. For instance, the light domain has Warding Flare. This allows you to use your reaction. You get 1 reaction per round in combat to do an attack of opportunity if somebody walks by you. This is going to allow you to use this reaction to impose disadvantage on an attacker, which basically means they have to roll 2 attack dice against you when they're attacking you, and they have to choose the lower of the 2 numbers. So this is probably going to reduce, your chance of being hit by about 50% roughly, which is great, once per round. With the Trickery domain, you don't actually gain any other passives, but you do, besides the spells, you gain an action called Blessing of the Trickster, which allows you to grant another creature stealth advantage. This means they're going to roll 2 dice. I pick the higher of 2 values when making a stealth check. So there is that there. And the Life Domain Cleric is going to allow you to use heavy armor as well as the other armor proficiencies, so if you kind of want to be more tanky. And it's also going to improve the effectiveness of your healing spells. It's going to give you 2 extra health points per heal, plus the spell's level. So if it's a level 2 spell, it's going to heal for 4 more health than would a standard cleric or a different subclass of cleric. I really like the cleric in early access. The healing is very, very valuable. You don't get tons of health potions. There's only 1 difficulty, so it's not like you can set it down to easy and you don't have to worry about this. There's only 1 difficulty in early access so far. The game's going to have multiple difficulties when it comes out, but right now there's only 1 difficulty. And having the extra healing is really good, so I highly recommend playing as a cleric or bringing Shadowheart along with you for that extra healing. Moving along to the fighter class, this is probably pretty self-explanatory for anyone familiar with role-playing games. Fighters are really good with martial weapons, They're very good martial characters in general in just about any RPG you play. That is also the case here. They can be ranged, they can be melee, they can use a combination of both. They do have a ranged and melee weapon slot, just like all characters, so you can swap back and forth. And in Baldur's Gate 3, unlike Divinity, it doesn't cost any action in order to swap weapons, so that's really good. You can go bow one turn, the next turn go in for melee, or do whatever. So make sure you absolutely have a melee and ranged weapon on your character, because you'll get good use out of both. Just looking through the proficiencies here, you're going to gain strength saving throw proficiency and constitution saving throw. So any of the strength and constitution checks you need to make against harmful effects. You're going to have proficiency with light, medium, heavy armor, and shields, and all simple and martial weapons. So that's pretty much everything. And you're also going to gain an action called Second Wind that once a day heals you for 1d10, which is you roll a 10-sided die, take that value. And I believe it's add +1 is for your character level. So I think this is going to increase every character level you get all the way up to, whatever the max level cap is. Once you hit level 2, you're going to pick from one of 6 class passives, which are archery, defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, protection, and 2-weapon fighting style. So here you're going to further tailor your fighter to be the kind of fighter you want, whether you use 2 weapons or you use a bow or you use a giant greatsword or whatever you want to use. Maybe you want to use a shield and be more defensive. Here you're going to tailor your fighter a little bit, and you're also going to gain an action that makes it so that you can take 2 actions in 1 turn once a day, which is devastating. If you can get 2 attacks off in a round, it's really, really good. So you're going to want to use this when you need it most. Once you get to level 3, this is where you're going to choose your subclass. You're either going to choose Battle Master or Eldritch Knight. Champion is also a subclass, but it has not made it into early access yet, so who knows when that'll make it. But for now, you're going to choose between Battle Master and Eldritch Knight. Battle Master, as you might suppose, focuses more on weapons, and you're going to get to pick one of 3 or 4 passives here that give you some bonuses in combat, like Menacing Attack, which allows you to use a superiority die to deal extra damage. And you're going to have 4 of these dies that you can use before you need to rest. So it's basically going to give you like an added damage attack periodically, and it's really, really powerful. Or you can even use Rally with one of the dice and boost your party members' hit points, which helps everyone stay alive longer, which is just fantastic. If you choose Eldritch Knight, then you're basically deciding that you're going to play sort of a hybrid fighter build with a caster build. You're going to get some wizard spells with this. So you're going to be able to either buff yourself, make yourself harder to kill, or maybe you're going to have some offensive spells, whichever you like. But keep in mind that these spells are going to use the spellcasting ability modifier of what the same would be as the wizard, which is intelligence. So you're going to need some intelligence in order to make these spells connect or harder to resist, which is kind of difficult to do on a fighter because you're going to invest probably heavily into strength in order to get your roll up on damage and hit chance. Same is true for dexterity if you're using finesse weapon or if you're using a ranged weapon. So you're probably going to have a decent amount of strength and dexterity as well as some constitution to keep your hit points up. So that's not going to leave a lot of points left over for intelligence. However, there is an item in the game, and there are items that you can look for. I'm not sure how many there are in the game total, but I did find one already that sets your intelligence to 18 called Warped Headband of Intellect. So this is a really good item to look out for if you're making an Eldritch Knight. This is going to allow you to dump all your points into strength, dexterity, and constitution. And then when you go get it, you're going to have 18 intelligence as well. Just to clarify one more time before we move on to the Ranger class, that strength is used not only to determine your hit chance with melee weapons, but also it increases your damage for every ability modifier point you have. So if you have +2, then you're going to have +2 added to your roll when you hit with melee weapons, and you're going to have +2 damage added. The same is true of dexterity for finesse weapons that have the little finesse tag on them, and also for ranged weapons. So you're going to, for each modifier point, +2 or +3 or +1 or whatever, you're going to add that to your roll for your hit chance, and then that again for your damage. So these are really important. If you're going to focus only on melee, for instance, you could just dump dexterity and go strength intelligence if you want to do Eldritch Knight, or if you wanted to go ranged, like a pure ranged fighter with spells, you could go dexterity intelligence if you want, and you don't have to use that item. So the Ranger class is what I've been playing so far in early access. I really like characters that focused on nature and maybe animals and have a tendency to want to use bows. It's kind of my go-to. So if you're going to be playing a Ranger, you're probably somebody that's going to be either dual wielding or maybe uses bows or both of these things. That's currently what I'm doing on my Ranger. But when you first pick the character, you're going to have to pick a favorite enemy. And this isn't just the enemy type that you are best against like it is in maybe other D&D games or other games, but they actually give you other benefits as well. For instance, if you pick Ranger Knight, you're actually going to gain proficiency in history and heavy armor. So if you want to be a heavy armor Ranger, this is a good favorite enemy to pick. Doesn't even say anything about enemies that are favored for you, but this is a good pick for you there. So you want to make sure you read over these carefully and pick the one that most closely matches the type of ranger you want to play. Same thing with the Natural Explorer. You're going to want to look through the list here and pick ones. The Wasteland ones are just damage reduction. This will cut the damage in half. These types of damage, cold, fire, poison. Or you can take Beast Tamer, which allows you to summon Find Familiar, which will give you a familiar you can cast like a cat or an owl or whatever. Or you can take an Urban Tracker, which gives you proficiency with Disguise Kits and Thieves Tools. Thieves Tools is good for lockpicking. So if like maybe you don't want to bring a rogue along, but you want to be able to pick locks, this is a good one to take. Rangers come with Strength saving throw proficiency and Dexterity saving throw proficiency. So anything that targets Strength or Dexterity, they're going to get their proficiency bonus added to it. And light armor, medium armor, shield, simple weapon, and martial weapon. So if you ended up taking the Ranger Knight, for instance, you'd have exactly the same proficiencies here as the fighter. So you basically be able to use whatever you want. At level 2, very similar to the fighter, you're going to pick one of 4 class passives, either archery, defense, dueling, or 2-weapon fighting style. These are very, very similar to the fighter. You have less choices here, but you're going to get similar things. You can focus on archery or defense or 2-weapon fighting, or maybe using 1 weapon. So depending on what sort of range you want to be, you're going to kind of specialize here. I personally like to go archer or maybe 2-weapon fighting style because I like both of those, but it's really up to you. You're also going to get a couple of spells here to choose from. Rangers, like clerics, use wisdom for their spellcasting ability modifier. So if you're making a ranger, you're not only going to want to have either strength or dexterity, depending on what sort of weapons you're going to use, but you're going to want to have some wisdom in order to cast spells effectively, because you are going to get some spells. You're not going to get as much as a cleric's going to get, but you're going to get some. So if you want those to be effective, then you're going to need place points into wisdom. Once you hit level 3 with your ranger, you're going to choose your subclass. This is either going to be hunter or beastmaster. Hunter focuses more on the martial aspects of the class. Beastmaster allows you to summon an animal companion that you can use to fight in combat. So whichever you want to do here is completely up to you. But if you pick Hunter, you're going to have to pick from one of 3 passives, Colossal Slayer, Giant Killer, or Hordebreaker. I personally like Hordebreaker the best. It basically allows you to hit 2 targets for the price of 1, which is great. There's tons of enemies in this game. You fight huge battles often, so it's good. But whatever you want there is up to you. And if you pick Beastmaster, you can summon different types of animals. There's like a wolf, a bear, I can't remember, boar. There's like 5, 6, 7 animals or something like that you can summon. And you can pull these out, and they're going to get stronger throughout the course of the game. And you're going to be able to do things with them, and they're going to be able to attack, kind of like you would in Pillars of Eternity or something like that. Taking a look at the rogue class, rogues are really good at lockpicking, at stealth, and they're really good at dealing damage to unaware enemies. If you have advantage in this game, meaning if you have like high ground or you're in stealth, you can do a lot of extra damage. Or even if a target you're fighting has another character next to them, you can do a lot of extra damage with the sneak attack ability of the rogue, which makes it very, very deadly. Sneak attack allows you to basically add an extra d6 and a 6-sided die to your attack if you meet the conditions, which again is if you have advantage, which is either you're high above the enemy, or if you're in stealth, or if they have a friendly unit within 1 meter of them, basically threatening them, then you get this bonus. So it doesn't matter whether you do it with melee or range. You can use this every turn of combat once, basically, so your action every turn can be this, and this can increase the damage they deal incredibly depending on the circumstances. Now, usually in 5th edition D&D, the sneak attack damage that you deal increases with your rogue level. However, even at level 4, which takes a while to get to level 4, this has not increased. So I don't know if it increases throughout the entire course of the game. It should at some point, I would imagine, because it's just going to be not as powerful later in the game if it doesn't increase at all. But I can't confirm that it does or what level it does. Once I have that information, I'll make sure to get that onto the wiki. Looking over the class features, you have saving throw, proficiency, and dexterity and intelligence. You have light armor, proficiency, simple weapons, hand crossbow, longsword, rapier, and short sword proficiency. So you're only going to be using light armor if you're a rogue, unless you take some sort of feat that increases that to medium armor. And you're only going to be using simple weapons, except for a couple other martial weapons you might use, like a longsword or a short sword. So unless you get that from somewhere else, those are the weapons you should be using. Once you hit level 2, you're going to gain the bonus action, Cunning Action Dash. This allows you to use your bonus action to increase your movement speed by double for a turn. This is exceptional. This is going to allow your rogue to move very, very far. So if you need to get like all the way over to get next to a target or attack something and then get away, you're going to be able to. And it's just really, really strong. At level 3, you're going to choose either Arcane Trickster or Thief for your subclass. Assassin is also a subclass, but is not in the game yet. I'm expecting this to be into the game at some point down the road. But for now, you're going to choose one of these two. And Arcane Trickster allows you to cast some wizard spells, mostly illusion and enchantment spells. And this is going to make it so that you are harder to hit, or people are distracted more easily, or maybe you charm them. So it's just going to be add you some spell casting to your character, which makes it so that rogues, especially those playing Arcane Trickster, can benefit from intelligence, because that's the spell casting ability modifier for wizard spells. And again, the item that I mentioned that gives 18 intelligence is also not a bad choice if you don't want to invest in that in character creation. If you choose Thief, then you're going to gain Fast Hands, which gives you an additional bonus action. This means you're going to be able to do 2 bonus actions every round, when combined with the fact that you can move extra with Cunning Dash. This means you can move extra and then jump, or move and then shove somebody. It's really, really strong. It's a really good ability. And Second Story Work makes it so you take less damage when you fall. So maybe you are going to be someone that's jumping all over the map when you're traversing, or maybe you are high up and you need to get down low somewhere for a combat fight. This is just really very versatile in and outside of combat. Warlock is another spellcasting class. They use Charisma for their spellcasting ability modifier, so you're going to want a good amount of Charisma if you're going to be casting with a Warlock. And they have something unique to them called Eldritch Blast that they're going to use regularly. This is a cantrip. If you're familiar with any of the old D&D games, you're basically going to use this pretty regular. This is basically going to be your basic attack for this class, more often than not. And it's very, very good. And they also have spells they can use, and they are very, very powerful. I think what I like most about this class, like right out the gate, is that there's a decent amount of AoEs. A lot of them are very close range, meaning they do an AoE around you. So the positioning has to be fairly good for them. But you get some later, especially at level 2, that allow you to cast large AoEs. And you can really be devastating with these, and it's just nice to have some AoE attacks. Warlock's going to give you that. There are 2 subclasses, and you're going to pick these during character creation. They are the Fiend and the Great Old One. As far as I can tell, everything basically remains the same between them, other than the Dark One's Blessing, which gives you healing every time you kill an enemy, which is great. Again, you can never have enough healing in this game. But I get the feeling that besides that, really the primary thing about them is for dialogue options or some sort of lore effect in the game. There doesn't seem to be too much difference between them from what I can tell, at least on the early levels. If I had to guess, though, I would say that maybe some of the spells are different over the levels. I haven't looked too closely at it, but I'm pretty sure with most spellcasting subclasses, the spells that you get at each level or every couple of levels are a little bit different, so there's probably a little bit different spells that you get. Warlocks have Wisdom and Charisma saving throw proficiency, as well as light armor and simple weapons. This isn't much. They're going to be spellcasting more often than not. They can use light armor, though, and some weapons. But you're going to be casting most of the time as a Warlock. I'm usually throwing AoEs with my Warlock or powerful spells, or trying to get up high and use Eldritch Blast because it's absolutely deadly. And you can modify Eldritch Blast as the game goes on to be more and more effective as well. At level 2, you're going to get to pick 2 of 9 Eldritch Invocations, which are going to benefit you in some ways. You want to read through these and see what they do. Some of them might let you talk to animals. Agonizing Blast adds a little bit of damage to your Eldritch Blast. They have different effects, so you're going to want to read these and pick the ones that best benefit the style of play that you're going to want to do. You're also going to gain another spell, so this is something that's pretty common among casters. I'm not going to mention every time you gain more spells, but just keep in mind, if you're a spellcasting class, every time you level up, generally, you're going to gain more spell slots. It's not true 100% of the time, but more often than not, you're going to gain spells. Once you get to level 3, you're going to gain more spells, and you're going to gain Pact of the Chain, which allows you to summon a familiar. This could be a Face Spirit, or it could be an animal or an imp, something like this. That's going to follow you around and help you in combat, etc. Wizard is the last class you can choose from at the beginning of Early Access for Baldur's Gate 3, and they are another spellcasting class that uses intelligence for their spellcasting ability modifiers, so you're going to want to have high intelligence on them so your spells are not resisted. Wizards come with proficiency in intelligence and wisdom saving throws, as well as daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaffs, and light crossbows. They have no armor proficiency whatsoever and very, very limited weapons. So if you want to use weapons or armor, because we can't multi-class yet, again, it's not in Early Access, you're probably going to want to mix them with some sort of race that gives you weapon proficiency, or maybe take a feat that gives you armor proficiency. You also gain the action Arcane Recovery, which allows you once per day to replenish extended spell slots. So this means that instead of having to rest to replenish your spells, which is normally the case with spellcasters, you're going to get an action that'll basically do this for you, so you don't have to rest as often. So basically, every time you'd have to rest, now you only have to rest every 2 times, which is great because this is going to make it so that you don't have to, waste time resting as often. Now, when it comes to wizards, you're going to get a lot of spells and you're going to get fewer prepared spells. So you can learn a lot, but you're not going to be able to slot as many. And as you level up the wizard, you're going to gain more and more spells and higher level spells and you're going to be able to slot them more and more of them as you level up. You also gain cantrips, which if I failed to mention what these are to you, they're basically spells you can cast infinitely. They don't take up a spell slot. They don't have to be prepared. You don't have to rest between using them. You can use them every single round if you want. So make sure you pick cantrips that you are going to use and pick a variety of different ones so you have something for each situation. Once you hit level 2, you're going to choose your subclass, which is either Evocation School or Abjuration School. There are other schools in 5th edition D&D. They just have not made it into the game yet, so we'll see when they make them. But this is basically going to focus you on a certain aspect of magic. It doesn't mean you can't pick magic from the other schools. It's kind of like Pillars of Eternity, like Evokers. Just think of Evocation kind of similarly. You're going to be primarily an offensive mage if you're going with the Evocation School. And if you're going Abjuration, then you might be more of a defensive mage. You won't notice a difference very much between these two subclasses early on in the game, because they have to acquire some passive things that they get later on. Like, I think it's from like level 6 onward, which I haven't got to yet, so I can't tell you exactly what they are. But you're really not going to notice it early on, but just keep in mind, if you want to be Evocation, you're probably going to be offensive, and if you want to be Abjuration, you're going to be a bit more defensive. Again, that's not to say that you can't use spells that are offensive if you're Abjuration, but you get the idea. And they're pretty straightforward. As you level up, you're just going to gain more and more spells and more spell slots. So the variety of spells you're going to have increases as well as the amount you have prepared. So you're just going to become more and more deadly and more versatile as you level up. Well, I hope this class video has helped you get started with your character creation a little bit. We do have videos on character creation and races, as well as our first impressions of the game if you want more information on what we think and how to help you. We will obviously update the wiki and update YouTube, adding more and more content as the classes get added to the game, because obviously these are not all of the classes. But I do plan to do some very specific class guides for each class, the 6 that are there here. And obviously, as they add more, we're going to be doing classes for those, going more in depth on exactly what sort of things you can do, talking about the spells, if they're spellcasters, what they're good for, how you can make an effective hybrid character or whatever. You know, just getting into the details a little bit more in depth than I have here. So look for those if you like this sort of content. We're also going to be streaming on Twitch at Early Access launch, so if you want to catch us there, be sure to stop by. And we're going to be streaming for the next few weeks, so if you miss us on launch day, be sure to come by anytime. If you want to, just BS about builds or ask questions or just see the game or hang out, feel free to drop by.